it's that kind of philosophy where I can watch something that they made 30 plus years ago and still see something there that makes me go, yeah, okay, that's what a critic should be.
超インテリ作戦開始じゃん。
One of the things I really have loved about you is following the channel is, of many things, is following you diving into anime a little bit. And I'm just curious, can you tell me a little bit about how you decided that you were interested in checking that out and what your impressions have been of the medium so far?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten as deep into it as I'd like to. But I think it's a combination of generally just kind of broaden my horizons overall. There were so many movies, and it's not even recently. I mean, I'm sure this name will come up a lot, but Roger Ebert would talk about a lot of the Miyazaki movies that were making it over here. And I realized that there were some really good movies that I just hadn't seen. And so it started off as kind of filling in those gaps. And then really around the pandemic, and I think when people were at home more, when streaming services were rising up more, and they needed more stuff to put on, more content, which I hate that word, but that's the industry term for it. But they needed more. And anime just exploded. I mean, when you look at Demon Slayer, when you look at even older shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender, saw kind of a resurgence. And so it was a combination of me wanting to fill in some areas where I'm deficient, and I'm still very deficient. I mean, I've barely dipped a toe into it. But it was also, hey, this is becoming part of the conversation. This is getting more and more mainstream. And it would be silly to just sit it out because it's something that I haven't traditionally been as into.
I've seen you do the videos on this. I'm getting so many things in my head here. This is a total tangent. I love the review of Arc, the Chainsaw Man movie, because it's like, you know what it reminds me of? This is going to sound silly, but one of the things I love about Martin Scorsese is recently, a couple of years ago, I can't remember exactly when the interview was, someone was asking him, like, if there's a great movie he saw recently. And he said, I saw The TV Glow. And, like, I was putting myself in his shoes. Like, this dude was born in, like, 1850. And he's watching these crazy, weird, like, sci-fi trans allegory movies. I'm like, that's awesome. And I feel the same way about you a little bit. It was like, here's this guy. You could be talking about anything. You could just stick to the hits, and we're going to talk about all the Marvel movies, but you're going out of your way to talk about these things that are totally outside your comfort zone. And I think that's awesome. But, on the topic of anime, would you ever have an interest in doing like a review on, Attack on Titan, the series, or something new you're watching? I know you've done a little bit of TV reviews. Is that something that would be of interest to you?
I actually did. Well, a lot of people have asked if I watched Attack on Titan, and I did. And I liked it. I really loved the beginning of it. And there's this distinct point, and anyone who's watched the show knows exactly where that point is. But there's a distinct point at which it sort of lost me because it went very deep and very complex and it's not that I mind deep and complex. It just wasn't as compelling to me as the beginning of the show. And so by the time we got to the end of it, I thought about, well, should I do something for the channel? Should I not do something for the channel? And it just seemed so, number one, it had been around for so long. And there's a certain calculus you do in your head, or at least I do in my head, of what do I have to say? What do I think this adds to the discourse? And it ended up for me being something where I just thought, I'm glad that I watched it. I can say that I've watched it, but I don't know if I necessarily have something super compelling to add to the conversation, especially many years after. At that point, I think I'd caught up to it right as it was ending. But so there is that calculus there. It's really more of just a time thing for me. People say, are you going to watch the One Piece anime? Well, that's a full-time job. I mean, that alone would be a full-time job to catch up on that. I watched when the Arc movie was coming out. I said, well, I want to review the movie, but there was enough Chainsaw Man that I could watch the show before the movie came out. And I watched Demon Slayer because a friend recommended it to me, and I loved it, and I still watch it. But I don't know. I think part of it is just kind of going where I think I'm most interested, and where you can kind of try to anticipate where you think the audience is going to be, but that's just a fool's errand because you can never predict that. You can guess maybe that they might be interested in this, but you don't really know. So it generally is just, where does it fall on my schedule? What else do I have going on? And what do I think I could add that's interesting both to the audience and to myself? So it's not off the table for sure, but it's also just kind of like how I treat everything else. It's like, I'll check it out and then we'll go from there. If I feel super compelled, like I have to do a video review of this, then absolutely I'll do it.
I mean, that's an interesting point. And I think a lot of not interviewers, I think a lot of reviewers grapple with that same question of, how interested am I in this versus how popular is this thing? Like, if a new Star Wars movie comes out, you kind of have to make a review of that, I imagine.
Yeah.
As compared
there are certain movies that it would be professional negligence not to do, because people want to know what you think of them. So yeah, there are definitely some that's just like, yeah, I mean, obviously I'm going to review that.
For the movies on the borderline a little bit, how do you make that calculus? Because I mean, knowing you, I know you're a huge fan of movies, and I'm sure you could make a great video on any movie, that you watch. But when you see something that you love, that's super obscure, whatever, like how do you do that calculus of, is this worth making a video for when I love it, but who knows if the audience is going to be there?
I mean, for me, I'm driven a lot by what I'm interested in. And so there's been times where I've gone to see a movie that, and I appreciate the compliment that you think I can make a good video about any movie, but there's some where I go see a movie and I'm just like, I don't think I have anything really interesting to say about this. I can make a 4 or 5 minute video of me just going like, it's okay. I kind of like this. I don't find that interesting. I'd rather spend my time doing something that I find more interesting. If it's a movie that really, I'm just like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like the audience doesn't really enter into the conversation for me, because I want to get it out there. I want to get it out there that this is a great movie that I really want to talk about. So that math doesn't really come in, at a certain level, that math doesn't really come into play for me, because I the YouTube element of it is everybody treats it differently. And, you have the sort of prevailing method, the prevailing mode, which is the Mr. Beast mode, which is like, it's all about analytics. It's all about tracking every minute, hour, second, field testing and experimenting with titles and thumbnails and figuring out what is the maximum audience engagement point. And that obviously that works. But you have to do that sort of strategy, I think, if you run a YouTube channel. But for me, I consider myself to be very lucky to do what I do. And I grew up watching other people do what I do, Siskel and Ebert and everybody else. And so for me, it's almost like a pay it forward thing, which is that I have this platform and I have this opportunity and I genuinely love movies. And if I see something that's incredible that I think people need to watch, then I'll do a video, because I legitimately want to get that word out there. I want people to find it and come back. And I've always said one of my favorite compliments that I ever get when it comes to the channel is somebody saying, hey, you recommended X movie to me, and it's one of my favorites of all time. And like, great. That's because that's what film criticism and the art of it and the whatever you want to call it of it did for me. And so to have that opportunity then to do that for somebody else is hugely, it's a privilege. It is. And so there's a point at which I don't care if people want to watch it or not. I did a discussion with a guy who grew up in the same town as me in Arkansas, who made a movie, and we talked about for an hour just about making an independent movie and the challenges of it and the process of it. And probably one of my least watched videos ever on the channel, but I don't care, because I thought it was a productive conversation. There could be somebody out there that sees it, then it's helpful to them. And it's like, if that's one of the things I can use my platform for, that's great.
You mentioned Siskel and Ebert, and I know they were a huge influence on you. And I think one of the things I was curious about is, you strike me as someone who just loves film, loves reviewing film, and YouTube happens to be the way that you can do it right now, or the way that is predominant. If you had your choice of, anything, would you want to host a Siskel and Ebert style like TV show and leave all the marketing stuff to everyone else?
I mean, yeah, there are. I mean, it's tough to run your own channel. It is. It's very tough to run your own channel. And if you're saying, could I do what I do and have an organization or a structure around it where there's certain things I didn't have to worry about? Absolutely, I would love to do that. I was actually watching some Siskel and Ebert stuff today, and it's incredible how they're doing the same thing that we do on YouTube. Now, you can certainly argue qualifications, experience. I mean, they were very highly educated journalists, and a lot of us don't come from that same background necessarily. But if I had the opportunity to review movies and maybe take some of the onus of running everything off of my shoulders, that would be great. But at the same time, I do enjoy that audience interactivity. I enjoy being able to get feedback from the audience, but Siskel and Ebert got that as well. I mean, they talk about it in their reviews. They got a letter from so-and-so. Ebert did a movie question, grab bag where people would write him questions. He'd answer them. So they had audience interactivity as well. But yeah, I mean, those opportunities, I don't think that YouTube is that opportunity now. I think I don't see another syndicated national show, movie review show coming out like Siskel and Ebert, because that's just the internet. But it'd be amazing. I mean, it would be wonderful if you were to say, could you live your life back in the 1980s and 90s? For me to be on a show like that would absolutely be my dream, because there's no other outlet like that back then.
Well, you mentioned that you were even watching Siskel and Ebert today, and I find that, there are certain people, whether it be interviewers or filmmakers or whatever, that I found super inspiring growing up. And a lot of them I watch nowadays and I'm like, I'm a little kind of over it. Like, what is it about them that, has been able to stick with you across your entire life and still be compelling even, years later?
I think that beyond just the specific movies that they're talking about, I think that their entire philosophy was what film criticism should be. I was actually watching just randomly. Sometimes I'll just throw on old episodes and just to watch them. And it was the best movies of, I think, 1991 episode or 92. And Roger Ebert was talking about Unforgiven. And it was on his list. It was on his top 10 list for best movies of the year. And he said, when I saw this movie originally, I didn't think much of it. And honestly, I think it's because I was getting married the next week and I was distracted. And I watched the movie again and I actually realized that it's very good, and I didn't give it enough credit. And so I was wrong, and I was distracted, and I think that I should have put it on my list, and it's on my list. And then Siskel argues like, no, you were right the first time. It isn't that, and I mean, of course it's the back and forth, but it's that philosophy of not just reviewing movies, but also being open to revisionism and going back and saying, hey, and I've done that before, but my review of Get Out originally was kind of the same thing. Whatever was going on with me that day, I just wasn't 100% dialed in. And a lot of the movie was lost on me. And my review, the one that's out there for people to watch, which is great, is very sort of, yeah, it was okay. Yeah. And then I went back, I watched it again, and I also took in, and I'm sure Ebert probably did this too, he took in what other people were saying. Now, that shouldn't necessarily change your mind, but it should leave you to go back and look at something again and say, is there something I missed? And I've done that before with plenty of movies, and I go back and I look and I'm like, nope, there's not. It's I think exactly the same thing. But it's that kind of philosophy where I can watch something that they made 30 plus years ago and still see something there that makes me go, yeah, okay, that's what a critic should be. That's what criticism should be about. And there's sometimes where intentionally I will say something that Ebert or Siskel would say, some philosophy about movie going that I know is something that they said, and it's something I took to heart, and then I'll pass that along. And then there's some times where I was watching a clip today from right after Gene Siskel died, and Ebert was saying that he wanted every time he sat down to watch a movie, he wanted to have a good time. And I've said that myself, and I had no idea that Siskel had that as a philosophy, but that's also what I've said many times, is I walk into every movie wanting it to be great. And so I think that there are lessons to be taken from, and this goes to any industry, really. I think there are lessons to be taken from the people that did it great, that did a great job, that blazed the trails. They were popular for a reason. And I think you'd be foolish to just discount them because they were old or because you didn't agree with their opinion on this movie or that movie or any movie. They had a philosophy towards criticism and a love of film that I think is good for a critic to take, even if you don't agree. Like Ebert was so close-minded about, and Siskel both were so close-minded about certain things, horror movies, a lot of movie violence, where sometimes they were right and sometimes they were just being kind of square, in my opinion. you don't have to agree with them on what they thought about movies to respect their what they loved and their passion and their approach to film criticism. And I think that they had it spot on.
So many great pieces there. One I'll pick up on was, you mentioned the idea of Siskel going into movies like, I want to have a great time with this. And I find that, what you were talking about, going into, how do I phrase this? I guess I'll skip to my question. The thing I'm wondering is, like, do you have to get into a certain mindset before you're watching a movie you review? Like, I find when I do interviews, there's a certain space I have to be within to make sure that it's going to be good and I don't like screw it up. But is there anything like that with movie reviews? And is it the same for different movies? Does it change depending on what genre it is? Or
I mean, the only thing I really try to make sure that I do is to just make sure that I'm not letting any external noise sort of filter through. And like, that's what happened with Get Out. That was all stuff that, like I said, it may have been I don't remember what it was, but I just remember that day. I think I was kind of rushed. I was late. I was running late. And I think you just have to work to not let that through, to not let any preconceived notion you have about the film come through. I've said many times when Venom, which is a movie I didn't love it, but I gave a positive review to, because I was like, this movie's crazy and it doesn't work except for Tom Hardy, but I actually kind of liked it. And I was sitting, I heard people just already in their chairs going like, oh God, can't wait for this piece of crap to be over. And they were critics. And sure enough, when I read their reviews, they were bad. I just don't think that's the right way to approach it. There's a new Minions movie coming out this year. I've hated every single Minions movie, not only hated, detested every single Minions movie, but I am probably still going to go see it. And I'll sit down and hope that I like this one better. And who knows, it could happen. I think that you just have to sort of make sure that you're giving each movie the respect of a clear mind. And that's why I always, and I've done this since I was a kid, even before I started reviewing movies, I get there early. I sit through the trailers. I sit through the commercials, because it's not just, oh, I want to make sure there's no traffic or whatever, but it's like, there's a centering for me that goes on. Is you get in, if you want food, you've got your food, you sit down. I'm in my seat before the ads even start. I'm in my seat at the minute the movie starts. And because for me, it's not so much, you can see the trailers online, but that's part of like this sort of, okay, I'm in the dark, the movie's starting. Let's get into this. It's an experience for me. And I just think I have to make sure that I'm in the right zone. And part of that is also, if I'm watching a movie at home, a Netflix movie or something, avoid distractions, ignore that impulse to pick up my phone, ignore that impulse to even pause the movie, because they deserve the same amount of respect, I think, as any other movie.
I completely agree with all of that. And I'm going to send this, there's so many people I grew up with that I want to send this to and be like, no, like Dan knows what I was talking about this whole time. Like when I was 15, I was always like, shut up, I'm trying to watch the movie. I would get so whatever, I'm going the whole thing. I had a thing, but then I got in a rant and completely forgot what it was. Okay, I'm pivoting to completely different things. I forgot where I was going to go. I love Charts with Dan. I watch it every single week. And back when I had a full-time job, is one of my favorite things. Is my boss always forgot to give me, or didn't have stuff for us to do. So when the video would come out, I'd be like, oh, finally I can do something with my day. But anyways, do you find, is there a connection between the quality of a film and its box office performance?
Sometimes. I think Sinners, Project Hail Mary, movies like that open well, but then do exceedingly well in the weeks after. I think that there's definitely a tie between quality and performance, because word of mouth is good. People are going back to see it again. And even movies I didn't care for, like The Greatest Showman. There was obviously something in that movie that connected with people because it had a phenomenal box office run. So I don't think that there are movies that I think can succeed in spite of not being great because they're around an intellectual property that people like, or people aren't going to enjoy a good movie. They just want to go for a different reason or whatever. I mean, we're seeing that with Mario right now, where the Super Mario Galaxy movie made it opened huge. It's going to make a lot of money, but it's going to be substantially less than the first one. I think part of that is because it's not as good as the first movie is. And I think if it had been fantastic or better than the first one, that it could potentially be doing better. So I think that there can be, but there are plenty of movies that are just not good that make a lot of money. Scream 7 is one of them. I don't think there was really a particularly positive response to that movie from anybody, but there was so much goodwill built up around the franchise that people still wanted to check it out. Sometimes, though, I think on the lower end, there are movies that would need good response to do well, like The Bride, for example. Kind of a tough sell already because we just had a Frankenstein movie and the trailers weren't very clear. I think if that movie had been fantastic, it might have done better. But there was just not a good response around it. So, there are so many examples of what I think are bad movies doing well. Transformers movies, Minions movies. It's just how it works. And nothing is universally loved or hated. Almost nothing. Some things are. I think where you see a movie's quality bearing out is really how it does subsequent to its opening weekend. Because then any goodwill from the brand has kind of burned off. And it really is about the movie itself. So there is some correlation, but I don't think it's a direct one-to-one kind of thing.
Taking us in a slightly different direction. This isn't, I guess, a question so much as a proposal for Hollywood that I'm curious if you will have any thoughts on. I love your videos where you're talking about, like, if I ran the Academy or if I ran movie theaters or whatever. And I guess in that similar vein, if I ran Hollywood, I think my executive order would be, like, the maximum budget for a movie for at least 10 years, $40 million. Because, like, I don't think I've liked a movie that costs more than that in a long time. And yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Am I cooking there? Am I way off?
You're not way off. I think one of the biggest things that, and really part of it is really the last 10 years with Disney, 10 plus years with Disney, where for a while there, they were making, every movie was $150 to $200+ million, and they were all doing great. And that sort of became the message for Hollywood, which is huge budgets and not necessarily economically spent. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say let's put a cap on the budget at a dollar amount, $40 million. But there are so many movies out there that cost more money than they should, based off of what the movie's about, or just what the audience is like. Why would you spend that much money on that? I mean, you look at Joker, Folie à Deux. It's why would any studio? Yes, the first movie did $1 billion. That was the first movie. When you look at the cost of that movie and then what the movie is, it's shocking to me that any studio would say, yes, we're going to spend that much money on it, because it was very risky. And it was basically everybody getting paid out from the first film. And that was sort of Hollywood accounting, like the sunken cost fallacy. Like, well, we paid that much for the last one, we have to pay that much for this one. That's not necessarily true. Not every movie needs to cost that much money. And for me, it's also, where are you putting that? Where are you allocating those resources? Because I don't like the way that the Marvel model now appears to be, we'll shoot whatever and then reshoot a lot of it later if it doesn't work. That's a terrible way to allocate money and resources, because you're blowing your budget up with VFX and reshoots, when if you could have spent a fraction of that amount of money at the top with screenwriting, with scripting, and go into production with a solid script. Like, why are you not allocating your resources there? That's the most important thing for me. I would rather have an incredibly well-written movie that has to compromise a little bit on visual effects than to have the most visual effects heavy movie in the world with a terrible script. And which one have you seen more of in the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, I agree on that. Well, I think a common theme I hear you describing there, and being an amateur student of film history myself, I see similar trends throughout the history of cinema. It seems like predominantly studio executives are morons, and they read the spreadsheets and they're like, okay, well, this much money plus Joker equals this much money, so we do this much money, that it's going to be, and that's stupid. That's not how, whatever. My question is this: it seems like the model we have now, and maybe the model should change, separate discussion, but the model we have now, there are people who are making these decisions, the producers, the executives, whatever. What kind of person should be a studio executive, do you think? Like, what should their motivations be? How should they think about film?
That's a great question. I mean, I think that modern studio executives in the world of big corporate mergers and everything, they're numbers people, a lot of them. It's ironic to me that Warner Brothers, which has been an absolute dumpster fire of a studio for well over a decade now, bizarrely seems to have two of the best studio executives in Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca right now, because they're sort of returning to that model of investing in filmmakers and being risky and stuff like that. An executive's role has changed so much over the years. We're a long way away from Robert Evans, who was also serving the interests of a major corporation. Paramount was one of those first big conglomerate type studios, but he seemed to be the guy that would go to bat for filmmakers and for projects. And to me, that's what a studio executive should be. I understand that everybody has owners and big companies that own them. I think a studio executive's job is to produce the best movie, not the most efficient movie, not the safest movie. I think their job is to produce the best slate of movies for the studio. Sometimes that means going to a filmmaker and saying, hey, listen, this ain't going to work. You've got to cut this amount of money out, or we've got to do a rewrite or something like that, because the way it is right now, it's too expensive, or it's not there yet, and this is not going to be successful, and it's going to be bad for everybody. So sometimes it is kind of doing what some would consider the corporate bidding of going to a filmmaker and saying you have to make changes. And I think that is necessary sometimes. There are a lot of movies I see where I'm like, they could have, especially filmmakers that have had a past success and have a blank check, where it's like they needed somebody above them to say, you should rethink that. And what I think has been missing a lot is I think that a studio executive should at times be fighting with the people above them. So that when the corporate person says, hey, you need to cut $20 million out of the budget for this movie, they know enough about the movie, they know enough about the filmmaker, they know enough about the industry to say, no, that's critical to this movie. I'm not going to cut $20 million out of this budget because this movie needs that. Or no, I'm not going to ask them to change the ending to this, or I'm not going to ask them to change this in the script because I think it's great. And the movie's going to be worse if you do that. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of executives that do it that way. There's a lot that do it this way. They take what comes from corporate and they shove it onto the filmmaker. But it doesn't feel like there's a lot that are out there risk gambling, and it's because to do that you have to put your job on the line. And when you go back to Sinners and everything last year before Sinners came out, that's what people were talking about with the executives at Warner Brothers. If this movie doesn't work, their jobs are on the line. I think a good studio executive's job should constantly be on the line if a movie doesn't work, because that means they're out there taking risks. And you know what? Sometimes that means you lose your job. No studio executive has ever stayed in their job forever. But I think that you have to find somebody who is, number one, cares about movies, not about spreadsheets and not about profits and not about quarterly income. Someone who cares about movies, someone who's knowledgeable, who can work with directors, who can work with executives, the executives above them, the people that own the studio and the people that own the studio. And there's very few of those that are out there. It's crazy to me that Warner Brothers kind of seems to be one of the only studios out there that's doing it, but it's not easy. It's not an easy job. It shouldn't be an easy job. And this whole idea, and I've said this, I think a few times on the channel, this whole idea of playing it safe by just reiterating the same franchises, I think we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years is not a safe strategy. It actually paves the road for you to take ruinous losses. Look at Disney. They've just lost their shirts on so many movies because they were quote unquote playing it safe. Let's do a remake of Snow White. That's a safe bet. No, it's not. It's not a safe bet because there's no filter there saying, no, the script isn't good enough. No, that's not a good idea. It's just going straight from corporate down to, you have to have a buffer there. And that's got to be a smart person who can fight both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to switch my camera real quick because I'm just realizing like half my frame is my fridge instead of my background, which is like not the smartest thing ever. Anyways, I'm with you 100%. I guess pivoting us to a maybe tangentially related subject. One of the, I can't remember what video it was in. It was probably a couple of years ago now, but I love, there was, well, I'm going to get distracted if I try to remember where it came from, but there's one video where you're like showing all the for-your consideration books that you had sent as a stack, which was so funny and eye-opening to me. But like, I'm curious, how many of those books are actually any good or like add to the film or make you think about it differently? Are any of them like worth the time and money put into them?
Yeah, they are. I mean, a lot of them are kind of tie-in books with kind of here. I'll grab one. I got one here for you. I can
Please,
show you
take your time.
because I keep some of them. Some of them
Yeah,
are
yeah.
actually pretty cool. So there's some that are actually pretty, like, like this one for the Irishman, which is like massive.
Oh,
and
beautiful.
it's like big hardcover, and it's got the full pages and pictures and stuff like that. I mean, these are really high quality books, and they send these out to the critics because they want, they're hyping up their movies. Some of them, it's like, this movie did not need a book. But a lot of those are like tie-in publications, books that were coming out anyway. And I think that some of them are pretty cool. It's just that when it becomes for everything, I mean, and it's not, this is not a complaint. I actually find it kind of funny, but it's just every day it becomes from like Thanksgiving to Christmas. It's like every day it's like, what came in the mail today? And a lot of times it's not even books. It's just random stuff. And sometimes it's cool. I'd say A24 actually has the best, I think, whoever does their marketing and sends stuff out to critics. They send out like clever stuff. So like last year they sent out for Baby Girl, they sent out a glass, like, milk, like you pour milk into it, tie in with the movie. This year they sent what A24's big FYC thing in the bottom was just 50 Marty Supreme ping pong balls with and it's stuff that ties into the movie. And it's like, okay, that's clever. That sticks in your mind. I don't think that stuff actually sways a whole lot of people's. If that stuff sways your vote, then you shouldn't be voting for awards. If you can be swayed by getting stuff sent in the mail, I think it's cool. Like, you get some cool stuff from time to time, and I get why studios do it. But if they were to pass a law tomorrow that said like, hey, listen, we consider it to be some kind of tampering, or studios can't send that stuff out anymore, I'd be like, okay, I get it. I understand. And there are some, there's other people that work that I'm not even on the real swag train. I mean, there's some people that get it 24/7, 365. And I mean, we're talking not that, cause some of that stuff is like, that's like a borderline bribe. I mean, this sometimes this is nice stuff to tie into movies and stuff. And I get it, especially in the world of influencer marketing and social media and posting it on Instagram and Facebook and X and TikTok. And it's publicity almost, but it does get comical at the end of the year because all of this stuff shows up and it's just like, this is nutty. I mean, and the amount of money that goes into it, I think it is a bit overkill. But studios also don't have to really send out as many physical screeners anymore because a lot of it's digital. Critics' Choice went all digital last year, and it's actually a great platform because you have much quicker access to everything. So maybe they're saving some money not having to do that, but it does get comical. But yeah, I'd say that there's actually some stuff that's I have a little mini library of movies that I really liked where those books are actually pretty cool.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, it does make me wonder, why is it that executives and studios put so much effort into these awards campaigns? Because it seems to me like they can't really be getting that money back. Like, it doesn't seem like it really improves the finances of the film. Is it just them being competitive? I mean, what is it?
I think it's an arms race. I think you're dealing with egos. You're dealing with filmmaker and actor egos. And I think if one movie has a big campaign like that, if somebody sends out a book like this, an Irishman book, then somebody from the other team is going to be saying like, hey, I saw that you sent out this book for the Irishman. Why aren't you pushing my movie as hard? And so it's like, well, if you have to push one movie as hard, you have to push them all that hard, or else people are going to get their feelings hurt, or people are going to feel slighted. There is a prestige and a sort of like immortality, I guess, that comes inside Hollywood, not so much outside Hollywood. People don't really remember who won the Oscar outside of Hollywood, but inside Hollywood, there is still kind of a mystique around that. And I think that you just have you have to promote your movie as much as the other studios are promoting their movies. And within your own studio, you have to promote almost every movie the same amount as you're promoting every other movie, because that's the only way to play fair. But even still, there are times where there are movies like The Iron Claw, which A24 was pushing so many other movies hard that year, and they barely pushed The Iron Claw. So many movies that didn't even have any awards shot or chances, but they had just been decided that was going to be, and they did nothing for The Iron Claw. And it turns out that there was stuff that got overlooked in The Iron Claw that didn't get any attention because A24 didn't push it until it was far too late. The Puss in Boots animated movie, as I recall, is kind of the same way. It really didn't get the push that it should have until it was way too late. So studios don't even always do the right math on their own end as far as which movies they're going to push and which ones they're not.
You know, yeah, I'm getting too many thoughts in my head. I'll pivot to something else. It seems to me that basically whenever a major new technology is introduced in film, and there are a lot of different ones we could touch on, sound, color, CGI, whatever it is, it seems like there's a period 5 to 20 years where every movie is like, we have the most color, we have the most CGI, you know, we have all this crazy sound stuff, whatever it is. When a major technology is introduced, what process, probably it's not going to be like a governmental or whatever, but like what process should film go through? Because it seems to me such a waste of time to have like 20 years of movies that are just, we have more CGI than the last one. It's like,
yeah,
I don't know. What does that question make sense? What do you think?
I think that somebody succeeds financially, Jazz Singer or Avatar, or with the IMAX format. I'm trying to think the big Dark Knight with showing in IMAX, and then everybody wants to be the next one on the train, and so then you'll usually get another movie that's not quite as good, like Alice in Wonderland, that is the first to that technology again, and then everybody runs it into the ground because they all want to make the same amount of money, and eventually it peters out and then comes back 20, 30 years later. It's economics. It's, hey, this movie made a lot of money doing this, and there's a short window where the appeal of that 3D or sound or color, just the existence of that, the presence of it, is going to have some pull to moviegoers because there's a finite amount of those things, and the longer we wait to do ours, the more other people are going to do theirs, and the less pull that has. So it's all sort of a cynical way to make money, and it usually works up to a point. But I think the shame about that is, if instead of every single movie pulling out 3D in 2010 after Avatar had it in 2009, if studios had gone back and said, let's make movies with effective use of 3D, like Avatar, for example, because otherwise, if a movie's great and it's in 3D, but every other major release is in 3D, it all gets kind of bundled in the same. And then you have movies like Godzilla 2014, I thought had great use of a 3D. Gravity, phenomenal use of 3D. I think those movies would have been even bigger if every other studio hadn't flooded the market with their post-converted 3D, and it's too dark to see, dim, no reason for it to be in 3D, and they burn out. They're in such a quick rush to make money that they burn out the format when they maybe could have made more money, all of them, if they had all just taken what the real lesson should have been, which is Avatar worked because it used 3D in a way that nobody had really experienced before. Let's figure out how to do that on our end, not with every movie, but with select projects like Gravity. And instead they burn out all the goodwill within 2 to 3 years, when long term, I think they could have made more money by actually trying to really process what worked about that. And usually, it either becomes omnipresent like sound and color, then everybody has it and it's all gone away, or it burns out like 3D. And now I think people are a little bit more selective with 3D. And I think you're seeing more movies that make actual use of the premium formats, IMAX, like Oppenheimer, and 3D. I think they actually are succeeding based on that. But we could have been at that point a lot earlier if it wasn't just such a mad rush for money. But it's all money and economy and trying to be, if you can't be the first to market, you want to be the second to market. And when everybody's rushing to be the second to market, then everybody comes to market at the same time and everything is that. And it just becomes comical almost.
Is that at all part of the job of a film reviewer, film critic such as yourself, to let the audience know, like, hey, this one is actually trying something rather than just 3D? Is that part of your responsibility?
I try to, because it's not just the difference in experience. There's a difference in price, and I don't think that a film critic is solely consumer driven, and that you're the only consideration shouldn't be money. Should you pay? It should be the art and it should be the effect of it. But I do, if I see a movie in IMAX or if I see a movie in 3D and I think it is particularly effective, I'll say that. I said that when I reviewed Top Gun Maverick. I said, hey, I know that premium screens cost more, but I think this would be a lesser experience if this were on a smaller screen. And 9 out of 10 movies that you see in IMAX, I don't think that's necessarily the case. But again, it's when you flood the market with everything doing this thing, when every major release is on IMAX, it becomes harder to separate out which ones truly deserve the premium price and which ones don't. And so for me, yes, I try to do that because especially if I think it's a good movie, I think that you should see it in the optimal way to see it. And if that is paying the extra for 3D or paying the extra for IMAX, then I think that that's great. Some people kind of pushed back on me with Project Hail Mary because I saw it in IMAX and it looked fantastic in IMAX. But I didn't see necessarily if do I spend this extra $5-6 per person to go see it? What I said in my review was like, it looks great in IMAX, but I think it would be an equally great experience in a regular theater. And some people thought that was blasphemy to some people. But I just didn't think it would be a substantially inferior experience to see not in an IMAX theater, even though it did look great in IMAX. Top Gun Maverick to me is a movie that if you're gonna pay the money to see it in a theater, it's almost you're wasting money not to see it in IMAX because that is how it should be seen. Same with Avatar. You have to see that in 3D and you have to see it in an IMAX theater because otherwise you're not getting the full intended experience of the film.
Pivoting us to something else. It's funny. I can't remember exactly when it was, but you made some video, or I saw you discussing movie fights somewhere recently, and you said something to the effect of like, I think what people, I'm paraphrasing you, it's like, I think what people miss about movie fights is the fact that like, we thought it was funny or we thought it was a joke or whatever. And I was like, or, we were just having fun. And that struck me because I was like, oh yeah, that was totally lost on me. Like I watched it when I was like 15 and what I took away from it being an idiot was like, oh yeah, I need to have the correct opinion about film, which was that's my fault. That's not anything you guys did, just out there having a good time. But yeah. I guess my question actually doesn't relate to anything I just said, so I don't know why I mentioned it, but you said something once to the effect of that like you forgot 90% of movie fights. And I relate to that a lot. Like doing interviews, I go back and watch them and like I have no memory of doing this because I'm so like focused and I'm so like, don't screw up the question, just get in and do the job. And I guess I'm just curious because I've never heard someone else talk about it. Like, what is it about that experience of recording movie fights that made it like so, just whatever it is that made you forget about it?
Well, I mean, first of all, kind of circling back to the beginning, that's sort of what we've all, even when it was on the air, as it got more popular, we realized, I think, that we were maybe a little too cavalier when we launched it. And I was and I own my part in that too. I was the most passionate of everybody. This idea of we knew it was a game. We treated it as a game, but we didn't realize until probably too late that I don't think that got as far across to the audience as much as we thought it was getting. And like I said, I am to blame because I took that game deadly seriously because I wanted to win. But I never considered, and it kind of goes to what you're saying also about forgetting what you do. I never really, maybe it would have been arrogant to think, but I didn't think anybody really took it seriously. And so I never really considered that anything we had had any weight to it because it's like, it's just a game. We're just having fun. And I think, and like I said, I haven't gone back to rewatch old movie fights, but I think that if you go back towards the later run of the show, you would probably notice that I'm less intense for that reason, because nobody wanted it to be any sort of a destructive thing to the discourse. This idea of there's one correct opinion and you have to fight about it until somebody gets declared right. I think that's antithetical to healthy discussion about movies and healthy discussion about art. And I think that there were a number of people, because of how seriously we took the game, who adopted that mentality of fight to the death. And when we saw that sort of borne out, and I don't think it was we caused this, but I think it was a byproduct of the internet culture at the time, especially post Last Jedi, where everything became that we're going to fight forever until somebody's declared the winner, which is never going to happen. So you're just fighting forever. I think that's when we realized, oh, we may have treated this a little too cavalierly, and we should probably modulate that a little bit, because that was never the intention. As far as like, yeah, when I say like, oh, I don't remember that. Part of it is just because, like I said, we didn't realize until maybe a year after we were doing it that it was actually a big deal, that people were not just watching it, but that they remembered it, and that they were keeping track of this, that, and the other thing. I mean, that was incredibly unexpected. And so part of it was that. And then the other thing was just like, it was just part of our day. I mean, that was how we would spend an hour and a half once a week doing the show, and there'd be work before that, there'd be work after that. And so, and I think that that's something else that we learned, and that I've learned, is it may seem like a small part of my day, but there are people out there who look forward to it and who do remember that stuff. And so it's important to keep that in perspective and to understand how much people regard it, and to treat that, don't treat it as cavalierly as maybe we had, it's just this thing that we do. It's like, but to some people, it's a little more important than that. So yeah. And then for me also, it's just because of the heat of the moment type thing. Like when and still, I mean, I just did movie fights again a couple months ago. In the moment, I'm not thinking about making memories or processing what's happening. Like I am like locked on. I'm listening to every single thing that everybody's saying, writing stuff down. I'm thinking in my own head, what am I going to say next? How am I going to respond to that? So it's so in the moment for me and fleeting that I usually don't remember what happened or even what I said, because once an argument's done, it's like, we got to go on to the next thing and focus in on that. And so that's the kind of intensity I still try to bring to it, is like that focus, and like, all right, I'm going to win. And it's like, I say stuff on that show I don't mean all the time. I mean, and people are like, how could you say this movie? So I love that movie, but the argument was this versus this. And if I say that guy's right or he has the better movie, then I lose. So that's just how it goes. And so for me, I'm not really processing even what I'm saying at that time. It's more like, okay, here's what I'm going to say to win the argument. But I will say that I tried to be less extreme as time went on, because there was this understanding that, part of it is how we communicate the show, and part of it is how people take it. We can't control how people take the show, but we can control our own behavior on the show. And hopefully we have tried to message more in recent years, or they have, after post me leaving even, that it's fun. It's supposed to be fun. And we're not endorsing this as like a life strategy. It is supposed to be a game. And I think that's why the questions maybe have gotten a little bit more ridiculous as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great pieces to that. And I think even following it, like I remember what was the puppet, like Cucumber? Like, or
yes, Cucumber.
Yeah, you would have people on, and then especially like as I became an older teenager, or I mean, I'm now 25, but like when I first saw it when I was, 15, whatever. I think even within a couple of years as watching y'all, I was like, oh yeah, I like totally misunderstood this. And well, I guess two more points on that. I think one, especially following your solo work now, it occurs to me more and more that like the juice of it is like how much you love film, and you're just fitting into like, hey, we're doing this fight thing, we're having a good time.
Right.
And I think being an idiot teenager, that was totally lost on me. But like, it's a similar thing with like Siskel and Ebert, right? Because I mean, I've heard you discuss, like, some people look at them and they're just like, oh, well, they totally dumbed down because it's this up or down thing. And like,
right.
I think anytime you're trying something new, you're gonna do one thing too much or too little or whatever, and then people are going to take it the wrong way. But like, ultimately, at the end of the day, that was my fault for for not thinking about it enough, because I just watched it and I was a stupid argumentative teenager who like the only thing I cared about was movies. So I watched that and I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. But that's my fault. That's nothing to do with you guys. But I guess a follow-up question on the movie fights thing is, now you've gotten so much more into the, discussing film in a much more, I think, I don't want to say genuine, because movie fights is genuine in terms of what that format is, but, much more true to you, or much more subdued, or much more just like, hey guys, I really love this movie. Do you think, has that been just a nice change for you, getting away from the like, duke it out thing and more into the like, hey, I really love this. What do you guys think? Has that been nice for you?
Yeah, I mean, the thing when people ask me about YouTube or just in general building an audience or building a platform or something, the thing I always say is whenever you're starting, whatever you do, make sure you enjoy it, because if that's what blows up, that's what people are going to want from you forever. That's what they're going to expect from you forever. And so whatever it is that you're doing, if you're trying to really build an audience, like, make sure you enjoy it, because that's all people are going to want. And if you try anything different, people are not going to be happy, because they found you doing this thing and they want you to do this thing. And I think for a long time, I was known as the angry guy, which is not really my approach. That's what I was on movie fights. And that's, and when we would do, like our panel shows and stuff, like I would sometimes, like, it was sort of a jokey thing of like, hey, let's go on a Dan rant about this thing because it's funny. But they're number one, that's not really my approach altogether. And number two, there are so many of those now. The angry guy on the internet yelling about movies. And I think that most of them, not all of them, but I think that most of them don't add anything particularly great to the discourse about movies. I think quite the opposite. A lot of times they are warping discourse around movies to be about something entirely different, which I don't think is particularly great. So where I got lucky was when we expanded our programming beyond movie fights. So it wasn't when audiences saw me not just doing movie fights, when I could do reviews, when I could do box office, that's where I kind of was able to show people, hey, I'm not just that. I also do this. I can also review a movie like completely straight-faced. I can do box office and do my deep dive analysis, completely straight-faced. And I still will do a Dan rant from time to time on the channel, where it's like I feel like it would be warranted. And a lot of times it's something that I think is funny to rant about, or something that legitimately makes me angry. But I'm glad that I was able to make that transition, because I wouldn't want to do that, because it would be playing a character at a certain point. It wouldn't be me. It would be me playing a character of this angry guy who yells about everything. And I tried leaning into it for a while, and it's like, I didn't like it, because I don't want that. That's not who I am. That's not what I want my online presence to be if I'm talking about movies. So I am fortunate that we were able to branch out and do more stuff before I left Screen Junkies, and I kind of broke out of that box, because that's not my approach, and I like to be able to use that flavor when I want to, but for that not to be the only thing that people expect of me. And just to kind of loop back again about Siskel and Ebert, what you're saying at the top is a lot of people say, oh, hey, they ruined film criticism. It became about binary, thumbs up, thumbs down. And I think that you can make that same criticism at Rotten Tomatoes, which is it became about binary, fresh, rotten. But I think the difference between Siskel and Ebert and Rotten Tomatoes is that for people that actually watched them, yes, it was thumbs up, thumbs down. It was a binary thing. But what they were really doing in their show was introducing to people in a very entertaining form the art of film criticism. Because what I did love about Siskel and Ebert was they were not really caricatures of themselves on that show. They were, they would bicker and argue back and forth. And I'm sure some of that was probably heightened, but I think a lot of it probably wasn't. What I loved is that they were the same intellectually honest, engaged, passionate, thoughtful, knowledgeable film critics on that show as they were in their columns, in their articles, when they wrote stuff for the paper. And so when people say they ruined film criticism, I would always counter that with, I understand that you may not have liked the fact that it became kind of gamified with the thumbs up, thumbs down thing, but I think that any harm that they did was outdone by the good that they did to kids like me that were watching at home, and to people that maybe didn't get the Chicago Sun-Times and the Chicago Tribune, or didn't get their syndicated columns, that were being introduced to thoughtful, actual, intellectual film criticism in a very accessible way. I think the good that did outdid anything that came from two thumbs up, two thumbs down. And I would argue that the Rotten Tomatoes argument has more teeth to it, because there is no real context with that. Unless you choose to engage with the reviews on that site, then that is sort of what people accused Siskel and Ebert of being, which is it's just an empty number metric that doesn't even really signify the intensity that critics liked or disliked a movie. It's just aggregated. And I think that has actually done the harm that people accuse Siskel and Ebert of doing. And again, it comes down to how people choose to use those numbers. But I sort of, to tie it all together, I respect that Siskel and Ebert were able to make a living for themselves on television without drastically altering who they were. And I'm glad that I was also able to do that and not get pigeonholed as the guy who yells about movies all the time. That may have been more successful for me, honestly, as a channel, but I would not have been as happy with it.
And I think that's ultimately the most important thing, right? Because especially, I mean, I don't really watch them, but I see a lot of videos about, like, I can't think of an example of things. Honestly, I haven't gone to the movies in a little bit, but, like, female action star, whatever, is ruining cinema and, is going to lower your testosterone level if you see the trailer. So, close your eyes and scream every time it comes on, whatever. But
and their last 20 videos have all said the same thing.
But what? I think what honestly really opened my mind on that was, funnily enough, watching Wake Up Dead Man. And I can't remember the character's name, but the guy who, like, I guess I'll put a spoiler warning on the thing, but, like, at the end of the movie, when he's sitting there with his like shitty book, I guess I should swear, his book on, like, the resurrection or whatever, and he sees all the guys in line, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the reward you get for being an idiot, is that you get an audience of idiots, And I think,
well, when you're courting that audience, then you have to be satisfied with that. Oh, that's the audience you're going to get. Like, this idea of, like, I'm going to court this audience, cynically court an audience, and then somehow miraculously a different audience is going to show up. That rarely, if ever, happens.
Yeah. Well, and I just, I think following just all of the Screen Junkies people, but, like, I think, like, Alicia Malone, for example, who I loved on Movie Fights, and now she's gone on to a wonderful career. I think she's working at Turner Classic Movies, I believe. And
she was the last time I saw she was.
Yeah, like, she found her lane, and like, you're doing your thing, now in your own way. And I honestly, I just love that, because I think there's so much, because, well, I guess I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent here, but it was one of those really interesting kind of lessons in life to me, because, like I said, when I first saw it, I just took it. When I first saw you guys through Movie Fights, I took it in such a dumb way, being an immature teenager. And then, like, over time, continuing to follow, you folks, has reminded me of, like, oh, wait, there actually are way more important things in life than just winning an argument about a movie. And when I first encountered your stuff, I was like, that thought didn't exist in my mind, And
right.
So I think it's been great how sincere you've been, and how, you've continued to grow as a reviewer. And we'll tell you what, I'll give you a couple more here, because I don't want to keep you too long, but
we can go a little longer. I'm fine.
Well, I appreciate you, Dan. You're a true gent. One of the things I love about your channel, and I think I saw you even mention this on your last stream, was something effective, like, I have no idea what's going to be on the channel next week, something like that. I'm not quoting you, but, like, how do I phrase this? You strike me as someone who is always really trying something new. Like, you had the history of, Bad Robot, or I've seen you talk about like, and some of my favorite videos are, you discussing like, hey, here's what's going on in the strikes and these are the negotiations. And I was like, because that
Right.
stuff's awesome. Like there aren't many places online where you can go and get like information. You can go and, get someone yelling at you or whatever, but like, I don't need that. I'm already stressed out. Like I just want the thing I'm trying to learn. So that's something I love about you. And I guess I'm just curious, when I see someone experimenting, trying new things, my thought goes to, well, there must be something they're trying to reach, or maybe even subconsciously, maybe they're not aware of it. I guess my question is this, like, is there a type of, film reviewer, film critic you're hoping to reach? Is it you just love trying new stuff? Like, what is it that keeps driving you to try all these new videos, all these new ways of talking about film?
A lot of it is keeping myself interested. I could do a straight news story about Bad Robot. Here's what happened. Bad Robot is leaving Los Angeles and moving to New York. It's pretty straightforward. But to me, the more interesting story was to dive into how did we get to that point? Because they were so J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot were producing Star Wars and Star Trek simultaneously and Lost. How did they go from that to how did we get from here to here? So to me, it was just an interesting story for me to research and then to present. Same with Alamo Drafthouse, which was a previous one. And, those are two that were named under the same rise and fall tag. And they've both done well. The difficulty is, though, that, like a lot of YouTube channels will just be like, that's me now. I do rise and fall. And but there's so much other stuff on my channel. It's like, well, okay, I'm not just going to do those videos from now on. But, I'm looking into what other stories might interest me along those lines. But a lot of it is keeping myself engaged. A lot of it is, what do I think is the best way to, there's so much disinformation out there, or information is so scattered across multiple sources. Like with the strike, a lot of those update videos I did on the strike were born out of me trying to find out what was going on with the strike. And I would read one article in Variety and one article in Hollywood Reporter and one article in Deadline and then another, and they would all have pieces of the information, but none of them would have all of the information, or one thing would say this and another thing would say this. And it's like, okay, this is too complicated. And the way it works now is like, if people want to know what's going on, why make them search across all these different articles and go in and parse the written statements from all the different guilds, and here's exactly what our offer was, and here's what, but it doesn't have any context to what the last one is. It's like, it's so much more productive for me. Like, as a movie fan, I would want to know what the strikes. I try to cover it as, this is the kind of video I would want if I were looking for that information, which is kind of comprehensive. Here's what they're offering. Here's what they offered last time. Here's the difference between the two. And there weren't too many places that were doing that. So that to me said, okay. And again, it's sort of chasing, you can't chase what you think the audience wants. Sometimes that'll work and sometimes it won't work. I think if that's all you do, you're just going to be, I say that Mr. Beast has made a career out of chasing what he thinks the audience wants. But I think for the size channel that I am and the corners that I operate in, for me to try to guess what the audience wants to see would just be running around in circles. For me, it's what's a story out there that interests me, and what do I think is the most interesting way to tell it? Sometimes it's just a breaking news video. Hey, Netflix dropped out and Paramount is going to, Warner Brothers has agreed to go with Paramount. That's what's interesting right then. I think the function, the best function for that video is in that moment. Let's get the word out. Here's what's happening. Here's what they said. Here's what they said. I'll track this going forward. But sometimes, like with the Bad Robot thing, I think the more interesting way to cover it is, okay, here's the headline. Bad Robot is shutting down their office in California and moving to New York. How'd we get there? That's what's interesting. So let's go back and backtrace. And to me, that's the most effective way to cover that story. It's not just this is happening. It's this is happening and this is how we got there. Alamo Drafthouse. They're going, Alamo Drafthouse is doing phone orders only. What? That's not, okay. This is how we got there. This is where they were. This is where they are. And I think that's the more interesting way to tell the story. And so a lot of times I'm not necessarily saying, here's what I think the audience wants. It's, here's what I think is the best way to package this and make it interesting so that if the audience is looking for this, then I think that it's presented in a pretty appealing way, and at least one that I think is informative. And I do try to fact check stuff. I mean, I always get something wrong. I try not to, but I do try to rigorously fact check and go back and fill in the details. And because I want to be putting out accurate information too. I don't want it to necessarily be a commentary piece, or not 100% a commentary piece. I want there to be factual stuff. So a lot of times it'll be, here's the facts and here are my thoughts. But first, the facts. And then we'll get to what I think about it. So yeah, I just think that everything right now is so, let's get it out, let's get it out, let's get it out, let's get it out, let's get it out. And sometimes that's what you have to do. But sometimes I think it's important to just take a breath and say, let's give this some context.
Well, I mean, there's so many wonderful pieces there, and I guess I'll try to zoom in on two of them. One is, I've never watched Mr. Beast because like I just so don't care. Like it just it doesn't.
Yeah, he's outside of. I mean, he's outside of. If he's outside of your demographic, he's 100% outside of my demographic.
It just, I don't know. If it makes people happy, great. It doesn't appeal to me at all. But I think a lot of people can get the wrong idea about what leads to success. And what I mean by that is this. There are going to be some people like, Mr. Beast or whoever else that just kind of happen to stumble into something that works really, really well. And they're motivated by, I don't really know Mr. Beast, but I don't really mind talking crap about him. He's doing fine. They are content to keep chasing it because they like the clout and they like the money and all that stuff. I mean, whatever. I guess that's fine. But that's not going to be reproducible because you have to be really lucky. You kind of have to spin the roulette wheel, and if it lands in your number, then great, you win big. If not, then you go to zero. And like
right.
there's not a great chance that you're gonna hit that one number. You know what I mean? So I think I really admire the way that you do it, and any number of other artists and creators that I really admire, because I think that's the only way that, I mean, for me, like a year ago, I wasn't doing YouTube, I wasn't doing interviews, whatever, and I couldn't have started from a place of like, I'm gonna go interview the president or whatever, and then I'm gonna be the hugest and I'm gonna make millions and millions of dollars, because I just don't care. Like, that's not. I like talking about movies and art and things, and like that's what motivates me and makes me excited, and like I think that's the only way to really do work that you like, because especially if your only goal is I'm going to get 10 million subscribers and whatever, like that's not really a great motivation, because like that's very hollow, and that's not something that, like, because I mean, like, as I'm recording this, I have 81 subscribers, and it's taken me about 9-10 months to get there. But like for me, the reason I'm able to keep sticking with it is because I love doing it. Like it's not a thing of, oh my God, like, and to be honest, I've had moments like this where I'm all self-pitying and I'm like, why isn't my audience bigger? Why am I making tons of money? Because I think I'm so amazing with this. But what gets me through that is just the remembering, like, I love doing this more than like everything else. It's so much fun. Like, because honestly, even I'm rambling on here, but like even just listening to you talk, I'm just like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe I'm and I have this with every interview I do, is like, I can't believe I'm talking to this person. Like, it's crazy. They replied to my email, because I don't know. I just try to make the stuff that like I would want to see. And I think, I'm not trying to like talk myself up or whatever, but I think I have learned that from you and from other people I admire, is that you really got to chase what gets you excited, because otherwise that's not going to work long term, my opinion.
No,
but
and I don't even mean channel performance. I love movies, and I love what I do. I love doing box office the way that I do it, and I love reviewing movies the way that I do it, and I love talking about the news the way that I do it, and I want to still be doing this in 10, 15 years. I think that there are things that I don't do, like I don't do trailer reactions in the sense of like sitting and watching the trailer, because I'm not overly emotive when I watch a trailer, and I would either have to give you a boring video of me just kind of watching a trailer, or I'd have to pretend, overdo it. And I'm not saying that everybody who does trailer reactions does that. Yeah. I'm saying that that's not how I would do it. And but the people say, oh, they perform well. Like, I know that, but I don't think I'm very good would make a very good video, or I'd be faking it. And I don't want to do that. Same with out of the theater reactions. I've had so many people say, like, why don't you do out of the theater reactions? They do so well on the channel. I understand that, but that's not how I like to review movies. I like to think about it. And I think that some of them kind of skirt around the review embargo, because I've seen like a 5-minute out of the theater reaction before. It's like, that's just a review. Like, that's just you getting around the review embargo. And I just don't know how to feel about that. And I don't want to like immediately, I just saw a movie, I want to think about it. And so it's like, that's not the way that I like to do it. And even like, if my goal was to be 3, 4, 5 times bigger than I was, my hope was maybe my approach would take me there. And I'm very grateful with what I have. And I have, over 200,000 subscribers, and I'm able to make a living. Like, I am very lucky and I'm very privileged to be able to do that. But I think even sometimes I look at other people that are in the movie space, and I'm like, geez, I'd hope maybe I'd be a little bit closer to them by this point, where it's 6 years, so in 2 days from now, on the 20th, it'll be 6 years since the start of the channel. But at the same time, I'm doing great. I'm able to make a living doing this, and I love doing it. If I wanted to be bigger, there are ways that I could have done that, but they would be completely antithetical to who I am. I mean, especially around 2019, 2020, there was a different kind of movie channel that arose that especially when I was starting this channel on my own. If I had gone down that route, I would be way bigger, because it was very much ideologically driven, and there be keywords and buzzwords. And if you take this stance about this person or this studio, you're going to go to the moon. And these are channels that are many times bigger than I am. But I would have perhaps been more successful doing that, but it wouldn't be who I was, and I wouldn't enjoy it. And it would just be another, work, a job that I didn't like, because I wasn't able to express myself the way that I wanted to. If I wanted that, I could have just stayed where I was, and it'd be a lot easier than running my own channel. If I just wanted to do something I didn't really care about, and that didn't allow me to express what I wanted to express, I could go work any number of jobs that would be a lot easier than running my own channel. The reason that I do things the way that I do them is because I have the opportunity to run this channel the way that I want to. Sometimes that means not doing things that work well for others, because they don't work for me. And as long as I'm able to make a living running this channel the way I want to run it, then I'm going to keep doing that. Now, that's not to say in a year or two that things are not going as well, and people have not really attached to my philosophy or how I do things. And I may have to say, I'm going to have to compromise on that. I may have to start doing some stuff that I don't really want to do just to pay the bills, but I'm not there. That's not where I am. I'm very lucky to not be there. That's not to say anything about people who choose to do those things. That works for them, and that's great. Like, that's as legitimate for them as charts is for me. That's their approach. That's what they like doing. That's fantastic. But this to me is not, I don't look at this as a game, or how can I wring the most money out of, the ad revenue this week, or how can I optimize every video title to get maximum viewership, to get maximum subscribers, to get maximum engagement. That's not where I operate from. I operate from a chance of wanting to legitimately bring information out there in a hopefully somewhat entertaining way, in a way that allows me to express what I want to express, and in a way that I can stand behind it at the end of the day and look at a video that I made and say, I'm glad I put that out there. Not that I'm saying something so great, but just that I can look at something I put out there and not kind of be like what we're talking with movie fights, where I'll go back and look at some episodes of movie fights and go like, oh man, I wish I hadn't gone that far. I was way too aggressive, and I knew what it was, but other people might not. That could be taken and interpreted a different way. And I wish that I had done something different there. I'm in full control of that now. And I sleep great. And I look at myself in the mirror just fine every day, knowing that I stand behind every single thing that I put out into the world via this channel. And if I were doing something different that didn't match what I believe or how I want to do things, then the money is not worth it to me to compromise on that stuff. And that approach, by the way, might not work in 5 years. So let's say I sell out everything about how I want to approach things to do it a certain way, and then that falls out of favor. or the shift that the tides change or whatever. And then now I've sold out. And also I put a shelf life on my career that might not have been there if I just done things the way that I want to do them. As long as I'm able to support myself doing this the way that I want to do it, that's what I'm going to do. If that means that I make moves that sacrifice growth on this channel, that means that I make a little bit less money, then that's how it is. There are always some compromises you have to make. Like I said, there are some movies that I don't really care that much about, but it would be stupid to not review them because there's going to be so much interest around those movies. And I understand that. And I don't approach those reviews cynically. I give those movies as much of a shot as anything else. But the overall philosophy of this channel is I'm lucky to do this for a living, and I'm going to do it in a way that I'm proud of and that reflects who I am as a person. And we'll see how long this road goes, you know? And I think that I would burn out otherwise. I think I can only pretend for so long. I think I would have burnt out by now if I was out there doing stuff that I just didn't really believe in.
I mean, I think that's all 100% true. And well, there's 100 billion things I could say on that. So I think it's all so eloquently put, and I completely agree. I don't even know if this will be a good question or discussion, but I just really want to. It's just one of the things that I've never seen you talk about it, so I want to. I don't necessarily believe in the concept, and I imagine you would agree. I don't necessarily believe in the concept of the best film of all time, whatever. However, if I were to put forward one film in that role, for me, it would have to be High and Low by Akira Kurosawa. And I've just never seen you talk about that movie, so I guess I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on it that you would like to share. Or maybe I don't know if you've seen it or not, but
I haven't. I need to. Kurosawa is on my eternal list of movies that I need to get deeper into his filmography.
So we'll tell you what, you can. This can, you know, if my opinion holds any water, which it absolutely should not, that would be my yeah. And if we ever get a chance to speak again, we can touch on High and Low, because I think I'll tell you what, I'll give you my little elevator pitch on it. I guess without even getting into plot stuff, whatever. The first time I watched the movie, my sister actually recommended it, which I'm perpetually grateful to her for, because I don't think I would have found it otherwise. There are moments in that movie, it came out 1963, whatever it was, you know, and I watched it for the first time 2023, 2024, something like that. And I'm literally just there, like, on the edge of my seat, like, oh my God. And it occurs to me, like, this movie was made across the world 60 years ago. And here I am watching some black and white film, getting like, my heart's racing like crazy. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is a real ass movie, you know, like and I think that is the aspect of filmmaking that I appreciate so much. And honestly, maybe I'm a little bit cynical on modern filmmaking, to be honest. Part of that is because, like, and you've talked about it on your channel, and you know, a lot of times I go to the movie and people just don't shut up, and I'm like, it's so hard for me to focus, and it ruins the experience for me. So I've kind of fallen off. I follow your channel more closely than I follow filmmaking nowadays, to be honest. But I think we will get back there. I think we're just in a trend right now. But that aspect of, like, let's just give it everything we got and let's try something really crazy, let's try to really give the audience an experience, I think is typified by that film. And it's something that I think we will return to eventually as a society, because that to me is just the North Star of filmmaking. But I won't sorry, go ahead.
No, I think we're swinging back that way right now. Honestly, I think we're starting to see the era of the every studio thinking they have to make a swing for $1 billion. I think is starting to slowly erode. And I think we're starting to see, like I said, with Warner Brothers and other studios, more investment in risky filmmaking. But it's funny with High and Low, because I often will get that from people is, hey, you recommended Double Indemnity or Casablanca or whatever. And I watched it. Wow, that was actually a really good movie. I mean, I didn't watch it because it was, like, you know, so old, but it was actually a really good movie. I'm like, the cinematic art form, when done properly, is timeless. I mean, The Passion of Joan of Arc, which was made in the 1920s, is one of the, and I didn't watch until 3 or 4 years ago, is one of the most effective films I've ever seen. So with no dialogue, just solely off of light and cinematography and acting, facial acting. and it's weird that there are some people that put a sort of a time limit on film as an effective art form, because you don't really see many people walking to a museum and be like, oh, that was painted in 1897. Oh God, that's so old. Like who'd want to watch? Who'd want to go look at that painting? It's like, no, it's still famous, and it's still on the wall in a museum because there's artistic integrity to it, and there's something about it that's appealing. Even if the method of painting it, if the medium has perhaps gone out of style, there's something about that painting, and film works the same way. And I love watching an old movie that works on me as well as a movie that was made last year. And there's so many out there, and there's so many that I have yet to discover. I mean, the greatest cinephile in the world can spend their entire life watching movies and still only get 10% of what it has to offer. It's when people say, "Oh, movies suck now," they don't make good movies anymore. That to me says you're not digging deep enough. Because I will agree that studio filmmaking, there aren't as many great movies that are made by the big studios anymore. And a lot of the big tentpole films aren't as good as they used to be. But there is exciting, energetic, inspiring cinema made. There's not been a year since I've been reviewing movies where I get to the end of the year and say, yeah, nothing really inspired me this year. And there's nothing really fresh or original or innovative this year. Nothing really it gave me a great experience this year. Not once, not 1 year, because it's out there. It may be a little tougher to find now, but it's out there. There are still movies that are being made, and whether that's 1917 or Portrait of a Lady on Fire, or Annette or Tar or Everything Everywhere All at Once. Even one battle after another last year, the sequence at the end, the chase sequence, was literally, I remember watching it and thinking like, I try not to think outside of myself too much when I'm watching a movie, but thinking like, I've never felt this way before. Just the way that this has been done. I've never seen film presented to me this way before, and I've never experienced a scene like this in this way before. So there's and Sinners, the scene with where it opens up in IMAX and the generations are all coming together. I've never seen anything like that specifically in a movie before. I never felt the way that movie made me feel in that moment before. There's great cinema being made every single year, and there was great cinema made every single year that cinema was made. And that's part of what I see as my job, is to find that and spotlight that and say, here's what it is, whether that's telling people to go see a movie from the 40s or 50s, or that's finding a new one and saying, go see this one. It's just, the day that cinema doesn't inspire anyone is the day that it dies. But I've yet to find that day, because there are still artists out there who are making exciting things. That's what you mentioned Martin Scorsese and talking about, I saw the TV glow, and he talks very, very much about Hereditary as well. And when I saw that he loved that, I'm like, that's because he loves movies. And he may be one of the greatest directors of all time, maybe the greatest director of all time, but he's also at heart a movie fan. And he's out there looking for movies that make him experience cinema in a new way. And particularly with I Saw the TV Glow, that's a challenging movie. I saw it the first time and I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then I saw it again with a little more thought and a little more context. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, there's stuff here that I didn't catch the first time, that I didn't pick up on. But I love that even Martin Scorsese, the guy who's made so many great movies, he's out there saying, find something that challenges me. And he appreciates it, and he puts a spotlight on it. And I think that's what Siskel and Ebert did. I'm not in Scorsese or Siskel and Ebert's league, but on a much smaller scale, it's what I do. And I think that's what movie fans do, whether that's just calling their friend and saying, hey, I just saw this movie, you should go see it. It's the same thing. It's out there. You just have to go find it. And it's always been there. And I love that I get a chance to sort of elevate some of that and be like, here, I think you'll enjoy this. Maybe you won't, but I think you will.